gotta get another one. Let me get this one over there.
1, 2, 1, 2.
First of all, how you guys doing? Thank you for having us today. Yes! You know, this is an amazing event you guys are going through right now. What's going on here right now is so amazing. The reason I pointed it out, I have to say this first before we even start, is that most people don't realize they're in history until, you know, hindsight. You never know when you're actually in a historical moment until weeks later or when the event becomes historical. Hello, Aisha. So I start here because this is what is most important. I'm going to start with young people, work my way right up. Because history, we're talking about, well, it's February 1st, Black History. We're starting off Black History Month, African History Month. Let me run through a few things regarding history real quick. I only got a little bit of time to talk, so I'm not going to try to talk too philosophical or metaphysical, but it's very hard to talk about African American male achievement without going into the depth of a person's being. This concept here, man, I like this stuff, man. Male, you know, man, that thing. History and this word. To make a long story short, first of all, big up to Carter G. Woodson for Negro History Week, which then became Black History Month. And it's a shame. This history, this month has a bittersweet to it. Because in one breath, why do you have to have a month dedicated to the teaching of African history? The other side to it is that you have a month dedicated to the teaching of African history. This is a bittersweet. The bitter is obviously, why do we have to have a month? Isn't African history all year round? Isn't this something we live and deal with? Blah, blah. Why only a month? I like to take it even further. When we discuss African history, why do we only discuss Africans? Now ride with me here. African History Month, or Black History Month, when you trace the history of African Americans through their African lineage, you come to the beginnings of humanity itself. You come to a place of great responsibility. You can't say Africa is the cradle of civilization and then come from Africa and care nothing about civilization. Or you say, humanity, all of humanity walked out of Africa. So then if we're studying African history, shouldn't we be studying human history? There's a responsibility to being an African. It's not just about your great achievements. It is, but it's not just about that. It is also about your responsibility. Now, if you are truly of African consciousness, at least in February, you should at least during this time, I'll put a spin on it and say, of course, you should study your African history, study African American history, fascinating history. But if you are responsible for the African American lineage, if you are responsible for the heritage and the reason that the month was even created, then we're going to have to update our study of Africa. African American male achievement. In history, we've been studying African history as only black people through certain periods of time. And this is also incomplete, because during African history, we should discuss the entire human race. And here's why. Because there was never a time in human history that Africans were not all over the world at once. Never a time. From the beginning of, and I don't want to say recorded history, just the beginning of history, which is also oral. You have two types of human. One type of human says, I'm only worried about me and mine. Another type of human says, I'm not having no fun unless the guy next to me is having some fun. One person wants it all for themselves. Another person wants to share. One person feels good that they have it all to themselves. Another person feels great when they share. The question with this word here, man, has to do with your ability to share. People think that manhood is only about protection and provision. I will provide and protect. And that makes me a man. But we are now in the 21st century. The old version of male doesn't work anymore. You guys have internet now, computers. Wow. The male of 20 years ago is not the male of today. I don't know, many of you might not know if this guy's name is Stokely Carmichael. He changed his name to Kwame Ture. And he led an organization called the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Now, in the 90s, I was touring with Kwame Ture. We were doing lectures. And one thing he told me, I'll share with you right here, because it goes to this word, African-American male. I asked him, I said, you know, we hear all kinds of stories about the civil rights movement and what was really going on and the counterintelligence program, FBI, all that. What really happened? You know what he told me? This is going to shock y'all, but maybe not. He said there were two problems with the civil rights struggle. Two. Only two. First one. Never again, he said, should there be one charismatic leader. That from now on, our children have to be all trained to be leaders. That's right. Yes. All. That's one. In the 60s, 50s, even 40s, you had one charismatic leader and everyone followed that. That can be no more. Everyone must lead now. Here's the other one. He said the number two thing. We kept our women in the kitchen and the bedroom. Oh, this is getting deep now. Oh, yeah. Number two problem with the civil rights movement. Women were not given a voice. Number two problem. People don't like talking about it, but I'm going to hit you with it now because it relates to this word here. If you can't respect women, you are not a man. there with that. I mean, just come right here. Real simple. Real simple. How are you a man? A man. Now, you could be a doctor and disrespect women. You could be an attorney and have no care for femininity at all. But to call yourself a man, a little different there. The only purpose for a man is a woman. For a man, now if you're a rapper, if you're any other thing, none of this applies. But if you're going to stand up and call yourself man, there's only one path for you as a man. And not only is that the provision and the protection of your queen, whether that be your wife, your mother, your sister, or your daughter. Not only is it the protection and provision for them, but if you yourself are not healthy, you disrespect them. Listen to what I'm saying. As a man, if you are not up on your feet, your queen can become disrespected. And why? Not that women are, like she's just there. Not at all. Everyone has a role to play. And this is what we have gotten away from, and this is why so many societies and families are falling apart. We have law, but no order. It used to go together. It used to be two things, law and order. Now you only have law. Do this, do that, go here, go there, don't go here, don't go there. But no order. Everything's out of order. Sons are not being sons. Daughters are not being daughters. Fathers, fathers, mothers, mothers. Nobody's being what they're supposed to be. If everyone would just get in their place, the entire society would rise. But this is how societies rise. Only a few men and women, but we're talking about men, a few men get together and they say, you know what? I'm tired of this. Look at my neighborhood. Look at these cops. Take a look at the hospital. Take a look. I can't deal with this. It's not where I want to raise my children. How you going to get free? Here's what I want to talk about. This is history. When you talk about history, you talk about black history, the tradition has been, when we come together, and talk about freedom. That's been the tradition. So I'm going to add a little bit of freedom in this. Put a period here on man. If you know what a man really is, a man, the other part of woman, that thing, once you know you are a man, first, no other man can tell you who you are, why you are, what you do, why you do what you do. No other man. There's no fear of another man. When you are a man unto yourself, first, you are free. Why are you free? Here's how you get free. Women, and never forget this is for the young people in the audience. Women make men free. This is a secret knowledge. I'm going to tell it to you right now. Listen to me. Your first knowledge is from your mother. Your first character, who you're going to be, that doesn't come from dad. Dad kicks in later, way down the line when you're a crazy teenager. That's when dad kicks in. But mom our first education. Mom tells us what a man is. And this is the controversial piece right here. Why are men bugging out? Because women are not teaching us anything. We are in a society where we believe that men lead the society. That's not true. That's just wrong. In every society on the planet, it is led by women. Every indigenous culture, every civilization, just do the homework. It starts with the woman at the center of the family. All the boys in the family praise the woman, or the mother in that instance. All the daughters and the sisters are trying to be like the mother, the matriarch. Trying to be the mother. The mother is the wealth of the family. She owns the land. She owns the house. She gave you your knowledge. She's the nurturer. She's all you got. But what happened? Now you're in a society that tells you that women are less and men are supposed to be on top and leading everything. This is the problem with African American male achievement. Right here. We're being taught by a westernized education that puts men on top. Now, if we're brave enough to really look at the truth and say, during African History Month, and during a conversation like African American male achievement, the greatest achievement an African American male could ever experience, the greatest achievement that an African American male can experience is a wife. This is going to hit you later. You're going to be home thinking about this. Like, what was he talking about? It's going to hit you later. Listen to what I'm saying. The greatest African American male achievement is an African American wife. Someone, your partner, who's going to walk through this dimension of time with you. This is what men should know. Not that you need to chase after women. Not that you need to not be an independent man. But the joy of being married over 10, 15, or 20 years is, you don't experience life. Speak on it. You don't experience life without someone you can trust. If you go through life with no one on your side that you can trust, you really don't succeed in life. Or when I say this, you'll succeed in your career, but you won't succeed in life. You'll succeed in your career, yes you will. But your life, which should be most important to you, this is what I'm talking about. I would suggest everyone here, when you leave here, especially the men, when you leave here, just as an exercise, reconcile with a woman. You know, this is the strength. You know, men can live all kinds, so we talk about being strong. You want to break a man down? Apologize to a woman tonight. Some you know you did. Some you know was crazy. And you've been holding it, and she's been holding it as the man as the man, if you want to honor African History Month, honor our discussion today, engage your woman. Encourage your woman. African-American men are their strongest. They're at their strongest when their women are confident, when their women are strong. I mean, where I come from a little place called New York City. A little island, broken up into 5 boroughs. And when I was growing up, a message to all the women here. I was, of course, my story is classic. No father. I'm born in Brooklyn in the 60s. My mother, her name is Jacqueline. She had 2 kids, me and my brother Kenny. Man disappeared. There she is with me and 2 kids, her and 2 boys. She's raising us. She's terrified because she's a single parent, and she's a single parent in the 60s, which was another issue. But she's a single parent, and she has these 2 boys, and she's praying every night. And I would say this to all mothers in a similar situation in that sense. If you are strong, your kids will be strong. If you're strong, stay strong. And I know this firsthand because I lived a poor life, man. My mother didn't have nothing. I mean, I don't know how many of y'all know about, having welfare and working at the same time. Yeah. You're not supposed to. Like that, And like, my mother did it all. She drove cab. I mean, she did it all. And me and my brother, we was proud of her. You see, look at what I'm saying to you. This is African American male achievement. Right. We didn't look up to men. Right. We was trying to compete with them. I'm gonna be his dad. That's men. Right. We looked up to our mother. Everybody in the hood looked up to their mother and looked up to your mother. When your mother walked down the street, your man was like, yo, there's your mom. Yeah. Straighten up. Everybody respects the mother. The mother. So to put a period here, if there is one thing to achieve, to teach our children, and to also acknowledge during this month, I would point it to women. I would put women at the center of the family. I would have men surrounding women. Women should be thinking for their families. They should be working for their families. They should be protecting their families. This will show the young boys what they're supposed to be doing. It's the mother that teaches the son, the young man, how to be a man. So mothers that are in the audience today, this African American male achievement is more for you than it is for any black man in here. It's more for you. You are the reason why we're stumbling. You are the reason why we built the pyramids. You are the reason. Now, as a man, if you can adopt this kind of psychology, where when you walk up to a woman, you see her as a goddess, not a queen, a god, deity in front of you. Many people say, I'm praying to God. I want to be in the presence of God. I'm on a journey to find enlightenment, oneness with God. All you got to do is thank a woman. All you have to do is empower a woman, and that woman will empower you. It is very simple. I know I'm talking to women in the audience. Very simple. Now, that's half my time. About 10 minutes. Let's talk about hip hop. African American male achievement. I got 10 minutes. Hip hop. Hip hop began in 1973 in the Bronx at a place called 1520 Sedgwick Avenue in the Bronx. A Jamaican dude named Cool DJ Herc came from Jamaica in 1967. Well, first of all, Jamaica gets its independence in 1962. Then you have this immigration of Jamaicans and Barbadians and Trinidadians and Haitians and Cubans, and people are coming into the United States. And what they're bringing to the United States is a forgotten African vibe that American blacks forgot. It started with a guy named Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, another Jamaican, comes to the United States preaching African unity. All black people, let's go back to Africa, unite the whole of Africa, and start our own nation. 3 million African Americans agreed with him. They started the largest movement you can imagine. Of course, he got deported eventually because the FBI wasn't having that. And neither was the NAACP. So at the end of the day, Marcus Garvey's movement goes out, and this is hip hop. Marcus Garvey's movement goes out about starting a black nation. And even though it is called a black nation, the premise of this nation is really all of humanity, which is what blackness is. It's what African is. Africans in Africa never called themselves Africans. They called themselves human beings. They didn't know what African is. If you went to ancient Africa and said, Africa, they'd say, they point you toward Europe. This concept of African, the African consciousness, is a divine consciousness. It's not a human consciousness. Human comes later when you start getting different cultures, ethnicities, this, that, and the other. But if you just dig to the deepest core of African or whatever, Asian, European, anything, you dig to the deepest core of it, it's consciousness. It's spiritual. It's non-tangible. You can't touch it. And so Marcus Garvey comes out with a consciousness-raising movement. This is important. There's no land to go get other than Africa, but there's no place for you really to be. It's something for you to be. Marcus Garvey, his movement goes out all over the United States. He influences a small family in Nebraska, the Little family in Nebraska, and they have this family produces Malcolm X. Obviously, his mother, I'm struggling for their names, Malcolm X's mother and father were Garveyites. And they were studying, they were actually organizing for Garvey in Nebraska. And it was the Klan that came to Malcolm X's father and said, you know, you continue this type of activity and we're going to kill you. Of course, he put the middle finger up and he kept doing his thing and they killed him eventually. They threw him in front of a train and train hit him, ran him over. And Malcolm X's mother went crazy. She couldn't deal with that. So they locked her up in an insane asylum. Malcolm's father's dead. So Malcolm now becomes this person with this hatred for white people. He's like, look, you killed my father, you sent my mother to an insane asylum, I'm going all out right now. So he, I guess his going all out was to date 2 white women. And so Malcolm found himself robbing apartments with these 2 white chicks with him. And 3 of them got arrested one night. The 2 white women, they get off because they're white. Malcolm goes to jail for 10 years. In jail, Malcolm becomes a Muslim. Meets a Muslim in jail. Muslim brother turns him on to Elijah Muhammad and the Quran and all of it, the teachings of the Nation of Islam. And Malcolm takes it in. But again, what was Elijah Muhammad teaching? He was teaching consciousness, how to think. How to think. Malcolm X goes on to become one of the lead ministers of Mosque number 7. He's running New York. There's even a street named after him in New York now. But not West Boulevard. But before that, he's running around New York trying to wake people up. You know the story. He goes to Mecca. He comes back. He realizes that the racial problem is not white against black. It's ignorance against knowledge. And when he returned from Mecca, he had a whole new outlook on what race is and what God is. And so Malcolm came back, and then of course you know the rest of the story. I bring this up because this is where hip hop starts. We give our start historically to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. because Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech outlines how hip hop actually came into the world. I don't have time to get into that now.
Yes, you do.
But you can trace Dr. King's speech where he says, let freedom ring through the mountains of New York. Let freedom ring through the mountains of California. Let freedom ring through Atlanta. Let freedom ring in the world. When you look at the I Have a Dream speech, he outlines every place that hip hop was to go prophetically. When you look at it. The point is though, and that's why we give our origin to Dr. King, but Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, the Black Panther Party, these groups was more about changing your thinking than trying to conform to an American mainstream way of life. This is what we have to remember during Black History Month. There are 2 Black histories. There's the mainstream, Black history, and then there's the struggle. The struggle is where hip hop comes from. We were the forgotten of our people. Hip hop is not all black. Don't get that twisted. That's mainstream. Just trying to make hip hop all male, all black male, because that's what white mainstream wants to see. But hip hop began with all kinds of people involved in it. Obviously, the fathers and mothers of hip hop are jet black Africans. Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash, Dougie Fresh, I mean, just black folk. But when you talk about culture, not rap music, but when you talk about culture, you start to look at hip hop a little different. It's not just about rapping. It becomes, what are you the lineage of? Where do you come from? What's your point of view? What are you standing on? Here's the quick history. In 1973, Kool Herc comes out and he's playing James Brown records. One of his songs that Young Wicked and Black is saying, he said, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. That's James Brown. And another guy named Alfred Ellis. James Brown, Alfred Ellis wrote this song called Say It Loud, Black and I'm Proud. This song comes out actually in '68. It's still hot in 2012, but it's still hot in '73. And Kool Herc is playing this song. Say it loud. And mind you now, try to get this in your head. We are outside. We are in the park. We are in a playground park. And a DJ brings his equipment out, 2 turntables, and it wasn't even a mixer, it was like an amplifier in the middle there. And he would play James Brown, say funky drum. A 1, 2, 3, 4, hit it. Boom, boom, bop, 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 bop. And he'd lift the needle and drop it again. And it would play again. 1, 2, 3, 4, hit it. Boom, boom, bop, 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 boom, boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, hit it. So while this music is doing this, Kool Herc is dropping this needle, stopping the record, playing it again, doing this thing. There's a female on the mic named Pebbly Pooh. And she's doing it. This is the first female MC ever. She's still around. She works for Verizon. Crazy. But she's the first female MC, was there with Kool Herc. She's giving it to you. Rocking with the rockers, jamming with the jammers. Kool Herc. Kool Herc was so huge that he started to attract everyone who was like him. Now, who was he like? He was a DJ, an MC, a graffiti writer, and a b-boy. He danced. He was a breakdancer. He was all 4 of these at once. So he attracted DJs, MCs, graffiti writers, and breakdancers. These groups of people would come around and jam the Kool Herc. 73, 74. A gang member, a guy named Kevin Donovan, is the leader of a gang called Black Spades. UNICEF puts out a writing contest and says, anybody who can write about Africa, we send you that. So a gang member takes on the UNICEF's text. I'll say that again. A gang member took a writing exam. Went in with the jacket on, sat down, took a writing exam about Africa. Won, hands down. Beat out the entire city. Gang member. Beat the whole city. UNICEF sends him to Africa. He gets to Africa. The Zulu chief there says, you African Americans are doing the same thing we Africans have been doing here for years. It's called tribal warfare. You kill him for your block, he kills you for that block. All y'all doing, you don't see that this white dude is controlling everything. Africa Bambaataa took that in. Now notice what I just said. Kevin Donovan went to Africa. But there's a guy named Africa Bambaataa that heard the lesson. Kevin Donovan died in Africa. He became this guy named Africa Bambaataa. And this guy came back from Africa. He's the leader of the biggest gang in New York called the Black Spades. He gains consciousness. He comes back to New York and he says, gangs are over in New York. Look at what I just said. We can't even do that today. He goes back to New York. Imagine, he's one gang. He's the Black Spades. You got the Savage Skulls, Savage Nomads, Young Skulls, this one, that one, the other. He's one gang. He comes up and says, you know what? I just got back from Africa. We're all bugging. We're all bugging. We need to stop this. And here's the other part. Every other gang leader agreed. They agreed. And in New York, gang violence ended overnight. 1974, they started an organization called Zulu Nation. Zulu Nation was all the gangs in New York putting colors down, putting guns, knives down. And now, the way we was going to settle our differences was through art. This was genius. This was genius, and it was going on the street level. These are street dudes thinking like this. So now, this thing Cool Herc was doing, attracting B-boys, MCs, graffiti writers, Africa Bambaataa took that whole group and said, okay, here's why we doing this. We doing this for peace, love, unity, and fun. That's the reason we do hip-hop. For peace, love, unity, and joy. That is the only reason to do any of hip-hop's elements. If you do an element, you rap, you draw, you break, whatever you do, if it's not leading to peace, it ain't hip-hop. If it's not leading to love, it ain't hip-hop. If it's not unifying your people, it ain't hip-hop. What we are seeing on radio and television is rap music. That is what that is, rap music. Hip-hop, that's the struggle. That's the struggle. Give you a little more. A little more. Africa Bambaataa comes out in '74 and says hip-hop is about peace, love, unity, having fun. That's it. All the gangs in New York said, that's it. This is what we're going to do. So some became B-boys, some became MCs, and we started what is called battles. Instead of me running up on you with a gun, let's write some rhymes. I can tell you anything I want to tell you in these rhymes. You can tell me anything you want to tell me in these rhymes. We'll never touch each other. That's outside the rules. Same thing with B-boys, breaking, graffiti writing, DJing. Same thing, rules apply in all of these elements. So the violence went down completely in New York City. There's no more gangs in New York. Cops didn't have nothing to do. So they brought in crime. I just went off into something else. There was no or very little crime in New York when we decided to unite. When we decided to unite, now let me tell you, because I learned this firsthand. The police, this is law, never forget this. The government has no right to give you a law that is against your culture and against your principles. Listen to this. No government on earth is going to walk into a neighborhood and tell that neighborhood what it's supposed to be doing. That's not the truth. The government only comes into neighborhoods and tell people what to do when the neighborhood is disorganized. If you look at every neighborhood that's organized, they set their own rules. You have a constitution, you have state law, city law, you have ordinances, traffic laws, you have all of this. But a community, a tribal law is the first law. It is the most important law in law. It's that primal law. It's your inalienable right. It's who you are as a person, which defines yourself to the law. So listen to what I'm saying here. And young people, remember this book. It's called Black's Law Dictionary. Black's Law Dictionary. It has nothing to do with being black. Just the author's last name is Black. Black's Law Dictionary. Look up police. Look up law enforcement. Look up words like, like police, policing, and law enforcement. These are different terms. every citizen is a law enforcement officer. You are not the police. The police are hired by the government to bring order to disordered communities. That's why the police exist. If your community was organized and you set your own law, the police would have to obey your law when they came in your neighborhood. I learned this firsthand with hip hop. Check it. When we was on the corner, rapping in the parks, the police would come by and arrest us for loitering. They used to say, you're loitering. We said, we on the corner thing, we rapping, we doing. No, you loitering, get off the block. In 1979, when a song called Rapper's Delight came out by the Sugar Hill Gang. Now imagine, from 1973 to 1979, rap music was illegal. It was illegal. If you did it on the corner, you was loitering. And you was told to get off the block or you get a ticket for rapping. Okay. And wait a minute, this is also documented in a movie called Beat Street, where Lee, the guy who's playing Lee, gets arrested in a subway for dancing. They documented it in that way, but that's what was going on with hip hop. If you just doing your b-boy moves in the subway, just practicing, the cop would come over and say, what you doing? Dancing. From 73 to 79, you couldn't do hip hop in the public without being called something. When Rapper's Delight came out, now you can do hip hop in the public. Here's why. Rapper's Delight sold 10 million copies. Here's the first lesson we learned. Legal and illegal is only a matter of who's in power. Legal, illegal, who's in power? Who's in power? When we had no power because we had no money, we were illegal. When Rapper's Delight sells 10 million copies, we're legal now. And we're legal only because we're making money for corporate America. Now, do you understand where I'm going with this? When we're not making money for them, we're illegal. When we making money for them, we legal. When we not making money for them, our music is offensive and obscene. When you getting tens of billions off our music, it's the #1 record in the country. This right here was the first game played. Right here. First we illegal. Now we making money, we ain't illegal no more. Okay, lesson 1 learned. Legal and illegal is based on rich, poor. Who's in power? But we learned quickly that it wasn't just money that was the power. It was definition. The point here is this. The stories that you tell about yourself and about your environment is what makes you rich or poor. This is the secret. Whatever you say about yourself is what's going to happen. This is why you hear rappers all the time talk about money. I got this, I got that, you ain't got nothing. Rappers always talking about what they got. A good example is the song Rapper's Delight. You got 3 guys from Jersey. And these guys, Big Bang Hank, Wonder Mike, Master G. And they're saying, I got a Lincoln Continental and a sunroof Cadillac. So after school, I take a dip in the pool. They didn't have none of this. None of it. record was recorded, they died. So, in closing, if there's one thing that we can gain from African History Month, from Black History Month, is new ways to think. Think your way out of poverty. Think your way out of ignorance. You don't have to not know. You know, when I was coming up, and this is for the students in this school right here. When I was coming up, I had a French teacher who used to always try to tell us French. He was teaching French. And it was the most boring class. We didn't want to go. He was always doing that thing. She's teaching us French. Now, she asked me one day, so what are you going to be when you get older? I said, I'm going to be a rapper. Now, I was like 12, 13. I used to always tell people that. I'm going to be an MC. I'm going to be an MC. And I told my teacher that. I'm going to be an MC. She was like, what? Because there was no industry. There was no rap industry. There was none of this. We were just doing it in the park. So I said, I'm going to be an MC. And I never forget, she gave me a weird look. Like, she didn't know what MC was. But she looked at me shocked that I had a plan. And she looked at me oh, okay, so I guess that's it. like that. But here's the thing, though. So I'm being cocky, too. I'm an MC. She trying to teach me French. I don't need no French. I'm an MC. He talk English. Now, here's how the mind works. I'm an MC. I'm an MC. Years go by, I become an MC. I record my records. Somehow my mind brings me to where I'm supposed to be. I get off a flight in Paris, France. I never forget this. My first time in Paris, I land in Paris. Can't speak the language. Can't speak the language. This is for young people. Listen to me in this audience. You may think what your teachers are teaching you now don't make no sense in your life. You may think that what you're learning don't make no sense, but let me tell you, I didn't read this nowhere. I'm telling you, life experience. I got off in Paris, France. I couldn't even order a glass of water. Listen, I had to spend $30,000 a week. Listen to me. $30,000 a week for a translator. For a translator. Do you know how ignorant I felt? And right away I'm going back in my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. Didn't somebody try to show me? And this is just what I want to say in closing, is that education doesn't mean anything if you're not going anywhere. Drop out of school. School don't mean nothing if you ain't going nowhere. But if you're going somewhere, this is the place to be. This is the place. If you're not going anywhere, and you know you're not going nowhere, and you say, I ain't going nowhere, then most of what I said here today doesn't apply to you, and neither does this school. But for those that are going somewhere, people who gotta go, someplace to go, you know you are not poor in your heart. You know in your heart this is not your condition, and you're trying to think your way out of it. That's why you're here tonight. let me tell you, God will not be mocked. You are here for a reason. Your steps are ordered. Every move you make, and I'm going to end it on this. I'm going to end it right here. African American male achievement. That's what we're discussing. But I'll end it here. Say this. Again, education doesn't mean anything if you're not going anywhere. If you're just going to hang out and run around the streets, and you know what? And there's no shame in that game either. You know, it has a path. It has a path. The streets have a path, and it's not always jail either. But it's not the higher aspects of how you can live. You live right now in a prison. We all do. It's a prison. Cities are prisons. That's what this is. Matter of fact, to be more accurate, it's not even a prison, it's an experiment. It's like an insane asylum. That's what cities are. They're like insane asylums. And you look around, it's like we're having this mad experiment about how does humans develop, and what happens if you throw this human in with that human, and what happens, and people are experiments called social sciences, social engineering, the New World Order. That's what this is. And those who really know what time it is, like, you can't waste your time. And I'm not talking about adults in the room. Y'all know, y'all here. But the young people in this room, if you don't respect your teacher, you can't respect no one in life. Because everyone is a teacher. Teaching is the first profession. And before you can learn anything, you have to be taught it. Teaching, the idea of a teacher is something you're going to see over and over and over again in your entire life. If you got problems with your teacher today, I advise you to get over those problems, because your teacher is a reflection of a person in society you're going to have to get around. To the young people in the audience, your teachers are human beings. They get aggravated. They get tired. They are joyful. They get depressed. The best teachers have the best students. The best teachers have the best students. It's the student that lifts the teacher up. We have all of these complaints against teachers. Why don't you raise the salaries? Let me start here. We don't have to wait for a federal government to take care of the human being that's teaching you. If you care anything for your teacher, deny yourself that Friday night dinner. Deny yourself that movie or whatever your pleasure is, and give that money to your teacher. This is young people. I'm telling young people straight up. Young people straight up. Support your teacher. Like, get in the habit of thinking like that. Like, when you go to McDonald's, buy your teacher some fries. Like, straight up. Like, you know, think about the person that is making you better. Think about that person. And so that's my conclusion, and happy Black History Month. Ladies and gentlemen,